Hello, my name is Matthew J. Hansen. I am the head of Sneak Attack Press, and I'm the lead designer on Abstract Dungeon.
Hi, I'm Bill Senras. I'm one of the playtesters and #1 fanboy of Abstract Dungeon.
And we're here to talk to you a little bit about Abstract Dungeon, and we're going to start off with some character creation. So the first thing you do in character creation is you determine your values in your 4 abilities, which are toughness, spirit, agility, and intellect. Feel like the names are hopefully pretty self-explanatory, but toughness is like how strong, how physically fit you are. Spirit is sort of your emotional strength, like your wisdom or charisma. Agility is how dexterous, how fast you are. And intellect, how smart your character is. And when you start out your character, you'll have 1 value at 4, 1 value at 3, 1 value at 2, and 1 value at 1 for these. And if you want to, you can just decide where you want to put those values. Like, if I want to play a really strong character, maybe sort of a wilderness type, I might put the 4 in toughness, the 3 in spirit, maybe the 2 in agility, and the 1 in intellect. Or we can roll randomly to figure out what those abilities are, and to do that we use the ability generation flowchart. Here we have our ability generation flowchart, and I'm going to zoom in to the middle where it says start here. And Bill and I are both going to make characters for you today, and Bill, why don't you go ahead and start first?
Alright, I'll start. I roll a 3, which means my primary ability is going to be physical. I roll again, and I get a 1. That means my primary ability is going to be toughness. That'll mean there's a 4 in toughness, and then I roll 1 more time to find out what my other scores are going to be. I roll a 2. So I have a toughness of 4, but an agility of 3. That means that even though I normally use strength to defeat conflicts, enemies, problems in Abstract Dungeon, I also am very agile and might see myself as a sword fighter, almost a samurai type fighter. And then my spirit will be 2 and intellect 1.
Now I'm going to make a character too. I'm starting at the start here again. And I'll go ahead and roll. And I got a 6, so my primary ability is mental. I'm going to roll that one again. And I got a 2, so I'm following the 1 to 3 up to spirit, so I know that I'm going to have a 4 in spirit, and then I'll make 1 more roll, and I got a 3, so that tells me that I have a 4 in spirit, I have a 3 in intellect, I have 2 agility, and a 1 toughness. And that tells me that I am a pretty heady guy. Spirit of 4, I might have some sort of divine or nature magic. And intellect 3, I'm also intelligent, so maybe I'm both a like cleric / wizard or something like that. But the toughness of 1 tells me that I'm not the strongest, not the toughest. I'm probably going to stay in the back when a fight happens. Yep, so we got our abilities. The next thing we've got to do is traits, and traits are just other little details about your character. And you can find traits on the back of this ability flowchart on this really big table here. And the idea with traits is that they're just other things that help describe your character. They fill in the details. They can be part of their background, maybe some physical characteristics, or part of their personality. And again, Bill and I are both going to roll some traits. When you start creating a character, you start with 3 traits. There's more spots on the character sheet for traits because you'll get more traits as you level up. And you can figure out your traits by rolling 3d6 or 3 6-sided dice and using 1 as the hundreds place, 1 as the tens place, and 1 as the ones place.
Alright. Well, traits are one of my favorite parts about the Abstract Dungeon game system. As you heard as we were creating our character, just with the ability scores, we didn't really have an idea of exactly what kind of character we had yet. As I roll now, though, and I get the traits, I'm going to get a better sense of what kind of character my character is going to be. So as I roll, I get a 2, 5, and 2. So I look down in the mental and emotional traits, and 2, 5, 2 tells me that my character is pessimistic. That makes me think that this is going to be a character that's going to have a kind of dour outlook on life. A character from the streets, thug, might have that kind of attitude towards life. So I write down my trait on my in the box under trait, and then I roll again to find out my other 2 traits. My second trait is 3, 4, 3, so I'm going to look under motives, and 3, 4, 3 is I'm a hero. So this is kind of one. It sounds like I'm going to be one of those almost anti-heroes. I don't want to be a hero, but I keep getting put in situations where I have to save the day. And then finally, I'm going to roll one more time. And this time, I get 5, 6, 2. So looking into the skills and hobbies, 5, 6, 2, I sleep with my eyes open. I'm definitely from the streets. I'm definitely a thug. Definitely, maybe I'm kinder than I want to be. Maybe I've got a bigger heart than I keep letting people in, and that's going to guide my gameplay as I play a game of Abstract Dungeon.
So now I'm going to go ahead and roll for some of my character's traits, and we'll see what we get. And to start with, I got a 6, a 6, and a 3, so I'll look at 6, 6, 3 here. And I've got a formerly inanimate object that's been given life. Now, one thing else you should know about the traits is that you don't have to necessarily stick with what you've got from the roll. Some of them are a little out there, they're a little silly, they might not fit every campaign. I've also tried to cluster those so that they've got a 6 for the tens digit when you're rolling. So bear that in mind. For a more serious campaign, formerly inanimate object might not be the best, but for what we're doing here, I think it's great. So I'm a formerly inanimate object. I'll note that under my traits. And then I will roll for my second trait. And I got a 1, a 5, and a 6. And that tells me that I'm forgettable. I'm not sure why my formerly inanimate object is all that forgettable yet, but I'll work on that. Most people would think that, you know, if there's a walking chair or something going around, that's a pretty big deal. But one of the things that I like about the traits is that they'll bring seemingly conflicting things together, and you need to rationalize how that works. And then for my last trait, I get a 5, a 4, and a 2. This is one of my skills and hobbies, and in this particular example, I'm an amateur athlete. So I was formerly inanimate, I am forgettable, and I play some sort of sports on the amateur level. Alright, so now that we've got some numbers for all our abilities and we've got our traits figured out, the last step is to sort of flesh out our character, give him a name or her a name, and make some other decisions. In Abstract Dungeon, there's a lot of things that are cosmetic that might have mechanics in another game. For example, your race, like elf, dwarf, that's not something that gives you a +2 to anything. That's something where you just decide, I want to be an elf, I want to be a dwarf, and you write that on your character sheet. Same thing with equipment. There is magical equipment. You never get to start with it, though, unless you've got a really generous GM. But by default, you don't start with it. Other equipment, you can have pretty much whatever you want. And it doesn't really make a difference in terms of gameplay what you've got. So if you've got a big barbarian with a massive two-handed axe, you'll be doing the same damage as just a martial artist with his fist. And it's just that both are so heroic and so awesome that they sort of end up in the same place. Your character's fist is way more effective than a two-handed axe in most other characters' hands. So, using this, we're going to go ahead and try to flesh out our characters, and I have to admit I'm struggling a little bit with mine, so we're going to let Bill tell us about his character first.
Well, looking at my character, I can tell that he's kind of a rough and tumble sort. He's got a lot of toughness, but he's really agile as well. He's from the streets. He's probably done some things that would be questionable or illegal, but nonetheless, he still finds himself with people who count on him, with people he ends up being the hero for. So I'm going to give him a name that kind of makes me think of that, and I'm going to give him the name Ash. Seems appropriate for him. And then as a description, he's going to just be a human, and I'm going to say that he's a thief, and that he's gruff but kind-hearted. I'm also going to imagine him fighting primarily with a small dagger and a club. Mainly because he doesn't want to kill people. He's a hero after all. But sometimes in his line of work, in his life, he's had to do things that he hasn't liked. So the club is for when he can just knock somebody out. The dagger's for when he has to deal the killing blow.
All right. So I'm still working on my idea. I've got that I was inanimate, and maybe he was like a statue at some point. And again, forgettable because, statues that are walking down the street are very forgettable. I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna align those yet. I'm probably gonna stick with the spirit being some sort of magic, and I'm thinking, maybe that this character was inspired by the gods somehow, or created by the gods, maybe was a statue in one of the temples of the gods, and the gods looked down on the worshippers with some favor or something and decided to bring this statue to life. That's good for the inanimate, for the spirit, for the intellect, and I'm gonna try to see if maybe Bill has some suggestions for the forgettable or the amateur athlete part of it.
Well, I think about forgettable. Possibly the god might not have wanted people to know what your mission was, or know that you're on a mission from God. Maybe when you leave somebody's presence, they immediately go, "Who was I just talking to? What was I talking about?" They aren't sure what just happened because you've been infused with the spirit of your god or whatever is driving you on your quest.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. So I think we'll go with that, and maybe that can also tie into like the type of god. Maybe it's a god of memory or a god of knowledge, or could be a god of the dead. I feel like there was something in Greek mythology about Hades. People would forget him or something, or the river Styx that makes you forget all of your memories. That's kind of a cool idea even. So maybe
you might even be death walking around or something like that.
Yeah, it might be like incarnated death, a statue. Oh, that's okay. So now here's what I am. I was a skeletal statue of death given life. So I'm like, I look like a skeleton, but I'm made out of stone. So I'm not really undead. And I was given life by the god of death. Slightly ironic. And now whenever people see me, at first they're freaked out because they're like, what's this walking skeleton statue? But then I leave and they're like, what? I don't remember that. There wasn't you're crazy. Walking skeleton statue? No, that's not real. And I play soccer too because death likes soccer. But then, of course, for a weapon, if I'm death statue, I have to use a sickle to reap down people. And but since I am mostly spirit or intellect, I'll probably actually just scare the bad stuff out of people. and, with my spirit.
And I think, Matthew, something that if it turns out, if you feel like as you build your character, one of your traits just doesn't work, you can re-roll. But, sometimes the fun is in figuring out how can I make amateur athlete work? How can I make death that happens to be a soccer player work? And it makes for some fun times around the table.
I completely agree, and that's one of my favorite things about Abstract Dungeon. Alright, so I think that pretty much wraps up the character creation video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something from it. We also have an example of play in a video that teaches you the basic rules for Abstract Dungeon. Now that you've got your character, I'm sure you want to go out adventuring with him or her. So go ahead, check out that video. There should be some links right below us, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.